Akira Toriyama is the mind behind Dragon Ball, and constantly I hear people in the fandom invoke his name, and I can immediately tell within seconds whether or not they really know anything about him. So many so-called Dragon Ball fans for years have claimed to be familiar with his work, and yet still haven't really figured him out and what makes him so different from everybody else as a storyteller. Well, on this edition of Dragon Ball In Depth, what I hope to do is that by the time you finish watching this video, you'll have a better understanding of Toriyama and how he approaches his work.
この放送はご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
To have a stronger understanding of Dragon Ball, one must always remember the influences behind Akira Toriyama's thought process, and I have done a few videos in the Dragon Ball In-Depth series covering some of these, but to reiterate, a big part of Toriyama's work is based on Chinese culture, so the more you familiarize yourself with that, the more indirect references you pick up on when reading the manga or watching the anime. Obviously, when Toriyama began writing Dragon Ball, he used the basic framework from Journey to the West, but as the series progressed, you start to see more and more outside influences, and you got a glimpse into Toriyama's fandom. He loves Jackie Chan kung fu movies and Bruce Lee. He loved Disney animated features. He loves 80s American action movies and so on and so forth. So it's easy to pick up on more and more things the more you know about pop culture internationally. And that's a big reason as to why Dragon Ball is so loved across the globe, because unlike other manga and anime, Toriyama has a very subconscious familiarity in Dragon Ball with the entire world, not just the land of the rising sun. Now think about Toriyama's life during his prime, which I feel was from 1979 to around 1995. Each and every week, Toriyama had to provide a new manga chapter for Weekly Shonen Jump, every week for 16 years, and this is not including Toriyama's side projects like Dragon Quest, Chrono Trigger, and some of the other one-shot comics he would do. Toriyama had to come up with about 15 pages of new material and draw it and think about the future each and every week. The truth is, Toriyama is a procrastinator, one of the few successful and wealthy creative minds on Earth who can actually get away with this. He'll start the week with an idea or two and then goof off for a few days before really cramming his idea on the paper. It's funny, because Toriyama will literally spend hours non-stop drawing his work to make sure he hits his deadlines, sometimes even losing sleep after taking a few days off to just goof around and play with model cars and go see a movie or something. Of course, he's talked about this in numerous interviews. Toriyama rarely overthinks things and just lets the ideas come to him. And really, when you look at many creative minds, it's pretty common. I can't tell you how many times I have had random video topic ideas come to me seemingly from the heavens when I'm just driving around or shopping or whatever. Many of the great songwriters of all time have come up with ideas at random times, in many cases while under the influence, and a few of them even keep notebooks near them at all times to write down lyrics that might hit them at 3 in the morning or something like that. It's just how the mind works. The subconscious mind sometimes is stronger than the conscious mind because we're less focused and our imagination runs wild. Maybe that's why Dragon Ball is so crazy. So Toriyama might sit there and pop in a VHS tape of Drunken Master or The Fearless Hyena, and he'll watch it and borrow a concept from it. Terminator 2 Judgment Day came out in July 1991 about a post-apocalyptic future with machines that destroy humanity, and boom, Toriyama goes to the movie theater. Boom, July 2nd, a day later, Dragon Ball Chapter 331 premieres in Shonen Jump with Mecha Frieza kicking off the Android arc. Now, I'm not saying that there's a direct correlation because obviously Toriyama was working on that chapter prior to going to go see the movie, if he even saw it opening night, but he knew of the movie coming out. He was already a fan of James Cameron and Terminator, so why not let his ideas flow? I mean, it makes sense, right? In Daizenshu 6, Toriyama states that sometimes he's driven into a corner and then ideas just bubble up. Toriyama's life kind of mirrors a lot of his fans. He watched a lot of TV, read a lot of comics, saw a lot of movies, and borrowed ideas from each and every one of the things that he saw. Oftentimes, Toriyama does not even know where his story is going, and he's been cited frequently as saying that he, too, is in suspense when he's writing his weekly manga. This is directly the opposite of One Piece's Eiichiro Oda, who was inspired by Toriyama, as many claim that Oda already has the entire series vaguely written out in his head and is just filling in the intricacies until he's finished with it. Toriyama just flies by the seat of his pants when he writes, which unfortunately does lead to plot holes and inconsistencies sometimes. When you examine Dragon Ball, even though Toriyama has never admitted this himself, you can sort of tell that as the series progressed, from the introduction of Goku to the Buu arc, he focused less and less on having things make sense. Did he get lazier as the series went on? Well, maybe. But remember, the years and years of doing this kind of work every week without virtually any breaks will stack up on you. The early story of Dragon Ball up until the Frieza arc is the most consistent portion of the series, and then starting with the Cell Saga and even deeper into the Buu Saga, the story starts to nosedive quite a bit. Of course, that's my opinion. Now, make no mistake, it's still fun to me and I love it and I still enjoy it, but you can tell more and more when you really deconstruct it that Toriyama was making it up as he went along versus planning things out. But the truth is, he was always like that, except that when you factor in burnout and aging and an ever-expanding, world, it became harder and harder for him to remember things or to tell a coherent story. Now, understand, I'm not making excuses for bad writing because bad writing is bad writing. I'm just trying to explain how the author does things. Toriyama's never really been that much of a planner at all, but what I think is fascinating about Dragon Ball that I think people should give him more credit for is that despite being a guy who writes shit off the cuff, he's able to remember it and connect things later on in the story, which is something that sometimes would take a lot of planning and intricate, storyboards and things like that, but it's not what Toriyama does or ever has done, yet somehow he's able to connect things, sometimes better than others, of course. But when you really think about it, it kind of makes Toriyama even more of an impressive writer in that he's able to retroactively fix issues as he goes along. It takes a lot of talent to do that versus just making it up. Another aspect of Toriyama that a lot of people have a hard time grasping is that he absolutely loves to do things that his fan base is not expecting. There's a reason some fans call him Trolleyama. This, of course, can lead to mixed results. Having a story that fleshes out more and more as you read it is a good thing, but sometimes the inconsistent storytelling and direction can lead to problems. But again, it's a case-by-case situation, but oftentimes Toriyama does make it work by actually showing rather than telling. And what I mean by this is, for example, Frieza's final form. He looks like a runt and is way less scary than his previous forms. So what does Toriyama do? Have Frieza immediately kill Dende and turn a powered-up Vegeta into his bitch and literally write Frieza to torture Vegeta just to tell the reader once again that looks don't matter in the Dragon Ball world, and that if someone looks like a wimp, chances are they're a lot deadlier than you could even think of. In fact, Toriyama almost always introduces new characters in pairs, and often, but not always, the smaller, less threatening looking guy is the more dangerous of the two. Vegeta and Nappa, Beerus and Whis, Champa and Vados. This is a storytelling crutch that allows Toriyama to create chemistry and dialogue between the two so that it's not just one guy talking to himself like Raditz or more recently Goku Black, so Toriyama uses it quite frequently. The other big point I want to get across here is the fact that Toriyama is a gag manga writer. And what this means is that even though he has a knack for drawing unbelievably badass martial arts fight scenes and is incredibly creative when it came to building a world, at his core, Toriyama is a comedy writer. And that's what he's known for. I think a lot of fans get caught up in transformations and fights and hair color and forget that Toriyama is a comedian, and yes, the name Toriyama fits. He loves to use wacky puns for his character names and situations. He loves dirty toilet humor. He loves to do unexpected things, knowing subconsciously that his readers will freak out, all just to entertain himself. So once you pick up on this and accept it, it makes the most sense. Toriyama will always try to do what the reader is not expecting, and he does it purposely. So when you read the manga or watch the series, whether it be the old one or even Dragon Ball Super, if something happens unexpected, before complaining about it, think whether or not it's classic Toriyama. The fact that the Omni King looks the way that he does is classic Toriyama. So really, it should be understandable once you understand Toriyama, which is what we're talking about here. Has Toriyama fallen off as a writer? Well, it's possible, but some would say that even back during the Buu arc is when it really felt like Toriyama was suffering from burnout. It's pretty safe to say his current material may not be as powerful as his older material, but I think it remains to be seen whether or not Toriyama is truly past his prime. However, signs do point in that direction. But you have to understand, modern Toriyama is a different man. He's a grown man, he's been married, he's had kids, he's semi-retired, and just stays at home most of the time watching TV and playing with model cars. He's not hungry for success like he was when he was a youth, nor is he bound by Weekly Shonen Jump's ridiculous deadlines. Has this made Toriyama less enthusiastic about the series? Possibly, but there's no question he still loves his characters, especially Son Goku. I hope this video helped you understand the man Akira Toriyama, his writing process, and why he does the things he does. If you enjoyed this edition of Dragon Ball In Depth, which is edition number 32, check out some of the other videos in the series to help expand your knowledge of Dragon Ball as well as your love of the series. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.